Welcome to Mercy and Truth Podcast. My name is Ernie. This is Jesse. I'm a pastor at Mercy Hill. He is one of our elders. This is a podcast coming from Mercy Hill Church, and the purpose of it is to equip, to empower, and form believers in order to walk and live and grow in the life that God's called us to live.
Yeah, and you'll hear us address a range of different topics from marriage, family, discipleship, culture, and even some stuff that we couldn't get to on a Sunday morning that we'll be able to address in a longer form podcast.
Yeah, it's going to come about once a month, and we have one right now for you. It's about marriage with Steve Jones, who's a counselor, so please enjoy that. Steve Jones, welcome to the pod.
Thank you.
It's good to have you here. Welcome to the pod, people. My name is Ernie. I'm one of the pastors at Mercy Hill Church. This is Jesse. He is also a pastor at Mercy Hill Church, and we have Steve Jones with us this morning, and it is just after we got done doing our marriage experience, our marriage conference.
It was a good morning.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was really good stuff.
Yeah, I had a great time.
Yeah. Steve, why don't you introduce yourself? Because there's probably some people are going to be tuning into this that did not have the opportunity to be here this weekend.
Yeah, Steve Jones, married to Paula. We've been married 35 years. Have 4 adult sons. They're all married, and just had number 13 grandchild born a week and a half ago. And it still feels very surreal to even say that. But hey, it's happening. Those boys are popping out babies, and we're having a good time. And we live in Ames, Iowa. I am the executive pastor of ministries at Cornerstone Church. That was the initial sending church for Candeo, which planted Mercy Hill. So still a really significant church and ministry in the whole SALT network. Oversee quite a few pastors at Cornerstone. It's a pretty large church now, just to make sure people feel cared for, and continue to see that ministry grow in other areas of how to connect people in meaningful relationship. So pretty busy there, but also serve as the director of Cornerstone Counseling Center, which we opened 6.5 years ago. Lead pastor Mark Vance came to me 7 years ago and said, "Hey, do you think we can open a Christian counseling center?" And I had a background in that somewhat, had utilized Christian counseling centers quite a bit as a pastor in Des Moines. And so I was familiar with that world and the value that could possibly add for Cornerstone and even the Ames community, and heard myself say, sure, let's open it. Had no idea. I think originally I thought, we might be able to get 1 or 2 therapists and do something. Had no idea that we would start with 5 6 months later and just see that mushroom and grow up to 17 or 18 therapists. And just reaching a lot of people in the community. Other churches are thankful that we're there, and even other people in the community, and even beginning to reach in, 2 or 3 or 4 counties wide, people coming in, and even as far as an hour, 2 hours away. And so it's just been a really, really great opportunity and ministry for the community. I'm also a licensed counselor and get to do individual marriage counseling as well. I do that a couple mornings a week and love being able to do that.
Yeah, so you have done a lot of things, have a ton of ministry experience, have a ton of counseling experience, and it's just, God has just blessed the work that you're doing in huge ways, and blessed us, by the way. You have been a huge blessing to Mercy Hill Church throughout its life in many different ways, through our leaders, our congregation, and so it's incredible. And if you guys, missed this, man, you missed a great weekend. And but we're gonna try to recap some of this stuff for you now. So one of the things that you kind of concentrate on is marital counseling. And there's kind of a paradigm that you think about it than most people think about marriage, particularly around like dealing with conflict in those areas.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to start with the conflict. How do we manage our conflict? We fight all the time. We argue all the time. And they just want to figure out some kind of technique in how to get through that. And sadly, a lot of marriage counselors start there. And usually those don't go very well. Couples will tell me, we went there and all we did was argue and fight in every session. And so I don't start there. I told the people that came to the marriage experience this, but I have been trained in Gottman marital therapy, and he's not the only one that talks about the environment of your marital relationship. But he has a really good framework of how to think about it. The Gottman marital house, which has 7 floors, and I always tell couples, and I have a giant picture of this on my office wall, that conflict is one of the floors, but it's the 5th floor. And if the first 4 floors are missing, then you don't stand a chance of dealing with the conflict, because you've not created the proper environment to even be able to talk to each other in a meaningful way. So things like building love maps, which is you both feel really known by each other. The 2nd floor is affirmations, fondness and admiration. We're actually daily and regularly speaking value statements over each other. The positive perspective is making sure that even though we're broken and flawed and we could have a tendency to see only what's negative about the other person, we're working to see what God sees and says about your spouse. That's what we want to affirm in them. And then turning towards one another instead of away. And that's just the idea of when I notice something, what we call a bid for emotional connection, I want to be attuned to that. I want to move toward that, not away from that. And that's just another very subtle way to say, you matter to me. I care about what you're experiencing, whether it's a happy emotion, sad emotion, loneliness, hurt, or just, I need a hug right now. I need you to scratch my back right now. I need you to help me right now. Let's go for a walk. Hey, do you want to go to the store with me? Any of those kind of things. And so it's the environment that we're building in that helps us begin to think about how can we take this conflict, which is, Gottman says 70% of conflict is perpetual. So it's not like we're going for a conflict-free relationship. That's impossible. That doesn't exist. We're just seeing conflict differently. And that's not really as conflictual as we think it is. It's only feels really bad because I don't like you right now, and all I see is negative. So the more we shape the environment of the relationship, the easier it is to work through things that aren't as big as we thought they were and arrive at really good decisions together.
Would it be true to say that, and this is just a thought that popped in my head, that not all conflict, but most conflict is really just a symptom of a problem within how you cultivated intimacy and closeness in your relationship? Obviously you have 2 sinful people living together, and not that you don't have differences, but the rub, the thing that causes where people go, oh, we're just not getting along. There's obviously things that they're frustrated or dislike or whatever.
Yeah, I said this with all the couples, but there's a lot of things I notice. The first 4 floors are either missing or just need a lot of repair work. But a lot of times when couples are saying we argue all the time, we fight all the time, we just have so much conflict, they literally are spending little or no time together. That always seems to be a common denominator. 2 people, all of us have busy schedules, all of us have a lot going on. There's no exceptions to that. And so they just have not prioritized the relationship where they're actually, a relationship cannot survive without time. Mm-hmm. A relationship can't just keep running on the fuel of the first love and when we first met and the wedding and all that. You have to keep pouring into it and cultivate it through time together and words of affirmation, those kind of things. So a lot of the conflict is not really conflict. It's just we disagree on something, which is normal. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you and I right now threw a topic, the 3 of us, there's a good chance we might not fully agree on all the aspects of that, and we can either hate each other and argue all day, or we can just really appreciate each other, which I think we do. And so even right now, we have a good relationship. I do with you guys as Mercy Hill leaders and elders, and I have good faith that we would actually be able to work through that pretty well. It's just simply because of the relationship we enjoy. And so a lot of couples don't even have what we have. And I don't hardly ever see you guys. Yeah. But I care about you and you care about me, and we get along pretty well and we appreciate each other. And so it's those kind of things that are the recipe really for disaster in any attempts to manage conflict. And really the things that are conflictual aren't as big as couples are making them feel. It's just they are in negative sentiment override and they just never talk.
What do you do? Because I thought is it Gottman's house? Is that what it's called? I thought it was really helpful how you said, you got to have the first 4 floors before you get to conflict. What do you do? Like if somebody comes in and they're already at stage 5 where they have like a serious conflict, like there might have been an event, like an affair or addiction or something where it's just like, hey, we don't have time to build those first 4 floors or to repair it. And I know obviously like your next step would be like they need help, like they need counseling, but how does that look? Like how do you do that when it's like we have to have this conflict? Like how do you work through that?
If it's something big, I mean, when I say we don't start there, it is helpful to listen, to empathize, to make sure I understand the level of hurt that has happened and what we're actually looking at. So it's not avoiding it. It's just not attempting to fix it or work with it until, they're really giving a lot of attention. And sometimes it's you're running on 2 rails. You're trying to build in things that are really important to build in while you might be empathizing and letting them process the hurt and pain. So as a therapist, I'm not ignoring their hurt and their pain. So I'm having them talk about it. Tell me what happened. Tell me what you're thinking and feeling right now. And so you want to empathize with it. But as far as the repair work between both of them, it's hard to do much of anything if they're not starting to give some attention.
Yeah.
And even the theology of God in relationship with us, I give a lot of attention to that because there's no way to do real repair work when there's been significant hurt in the relationship if we're not establishing covenant, a covenantal love, if we're not operating out of that versus transactional. If they're caught in a transactional loop, it's just hopeless on any kind of healing and restorative work. They have to get back into a covenant mindset and a grace mindset where they're able to extend grace to each other. So if the crisis, it can reach a level. I mean, you talk about an affair, that's just kind of a different level that is the most profound breach of the covenant. So there's a lot of other things that we have to talk about on how do you even begin to talk about that as a couple? Is it repairable? What is, betrayal trauma? I mean, I know the word trauma gets overused a lot, but it's very helpful in what somebody feels when their spouse commits adultery on them. It's just such a deep betrayal. And so I have to go there for a while, often with couples, on what does that look like and what kind of time and what kind of effort does it take to even begin to heal the depth of that wound, and what does forgiveness look like? I use forgiveness therapy, which was created by Dr. Enright in his work with women rescued from sex trafficking, and not looking at forgiveness as some quick thing. Well, you just need to forgive, but that they're dealing with such deep, deep wounds in their life, and he calls it the work of forgiveness. And just being patient with that and attaching the process of grief and loss and what we would do with somebody that's grieving with forgiveness, which is a process. And so just helping a couple be if they want to work through, and I've worked with couples where there's been affairs that have worked through that, but you have to be very patient. So that's just kind of a different, we don't just jump on the Gottman house. There's something more profound going on. But that's a great question.
So along those lines, I got a question for you, because you've been a pastor, you're a counselor, and times that you've shared with me about things that you wish you knew when you were lead pastoring. What are the things that you would tell pastors to do when a couple shows up and the wife has discovered the husband is having an affair? Mm-hmm. Like, what would be your counsel to pastors and how they should respond in that moment? And that I would obviously tell us what our counsel to someone who's going through that.
Do you have like another 3 or 4 hours we can talk?
Maybe just like immediate. Like here's the
Yeah.
first, like with the first 5 minutes.
I think one of the mistakes that I have made early on, and that I think pastors make, is and I don't think pastors intend to do this, but ways that we tend to minimize the pain that person is fearing. First of all, we believe what they're telling us, but to not empathize with their pain and tend to minimize it and move them toward more of a mentality of a quick fix, which is, well, he went and slept with another woman, but the Bible says, we need to have forgiveness in our heart. And if he comes back and says, I'm sorry, we just, you need to forgive him and move on. And I've even heard people share with me that they were told by pastors, if you never want that to happen again, just give him more sex.
Wow.
It's just so damaging and hurtful and devaluing and demoralizing. And so pastors need to just move into that with extreme empathy and care and patience to help them process what they're experiencing. Again, I just mentioned betrayal trauma. Some good books on intimate deception is a great book that of a wife that discovered that her husband had committed an affair on her, and she just talks through what that felt like and how to move toward healing and forgiveness in that. So it's just patience, and even not being so quick. What does true repentance look like on the side of the perpetrator, the one that committed that? What do we need to, I talk a lot about 1 Corinthians 5, the guy that committed sexual sin and then was kicked out of the church because there was a lack of repentance, and what it took for Paul to say it's okay to bring him back in and to make a distinction between worldly sorrow in 2 Corinthians 7 and godly sorrow. And they both can look very similar on the front end. The dude comes in, he's crying, he's like, I don't want to lose my wife and all that, but it be absent of true godly sorrow, which brings repentance. And repentance isn't just words. Repentance is what we see being produced in that person that gives us confidence. It gave the Corinthian church confidence, where Paul said, okay, see what this godly sorrow has produced in him. So I think we're too quick to try to get stuff together and get them on their way, happy married couple. The wounds are so deep, and the need for genuine repentance being seen and sustained in that person's life for there to be any hope to restore covenant, to restore trust of her and him.
Yeah.
That's a long answer.
It was a good answer,
That's
though.
good. Yeah.
So appreciate it. Well, hey, we have like so many questions to get
Okay.
through. So we're just going to pepper through them. And guys, y'all are just going to bear with us. Like, we're just going to go boom, 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 boom. So we may not answer them all in depth, but in some of them we're like, it's this. Go back and see this thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So, hey, let's just get into these questions. Here's the first one, Steve. Do you have any advice/suggestions for phone entertainment boundaries to make sure your spouse are giving attention to each other before and after kids?
Before and after kids?
Yeah.
I think phones in general can be super helpful. I got tons of apps and they're super helpful to me, but I just think anything you can do to make sure it's not becoming a distraction between you and your spouse in key moments where conversation is really important. We talked about the 5 rituals of connection. It's just having those moments, whether it's dinner time with the family, your daily connect time, your date, going out on a date, just leave your phone somewhere so that you feel like you're truly attuned to each other. It used to be in the old days, put the newspaper down and pay attention. It's total old school, or quit looking at the TV, turn the TV off. So now it's social media run amok. And so I just think a clear nonverbal is, I am fully focused on you, as I am not looking at my phone. I'm not scrolling. I'm not like looking up. And we can all catch ourselves in that, but I think it's just making an intentional effort. And even with kids, I have had one of my grandsons come up to me and say, "Grandpa, put your phone down."
Yeah.
So I'm not out of the woods on that, and so we all need to hear that being more intentional.
It's good.
Yeah, I've got that too for my kids too. Then just pull the phone down. I'm like, what am I doing here? Idiot.
Right.
Here's the next one. In the spiritual root system, can you speak more on the difference between desires, longings, and hope?
Yeah. The desires, and this is spelled out in a lot of detail in Chip Dodd's book, Voice of the Heart. And I don't know if I will do him full justice, but I think desires is something more immediate, that you desire, versus longing. Longing is deep. It's visionary. It's, I long to see, and I think I mentioned this, Chip Dodd puts out words like justice. This is an area where there's an injustice, and I have this deep longing to see something happen in that. So desire might be a little bit more temporal, not quite as deep. I think hope just maybe that's the one that gets more into the vision that we have for life, just way projecting out. This is what I really, really hope that God, kind of the Jeremiah 1:5 thing, when we can land on, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you. A lot of different things that can help you understand what that appointment is. But once you start landing on that and you realize, man, I am doing this in my life right now, and I would long, maybe longing and hope kind of coincide here, but I long to do something different. I long, and I even if it's like a midlife thing, I mean, I don't treat midlife as a crisis. I talk about it with people that come to see me as an opportunity, because sometimes it takes a lot of living and life experience to really decide, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Do I have a deep longing for something different? And that's big. And sometimes we're fearful about revealing the deeper longings down inside, and especially our deepest hope, And so I've seen people, and maybe this isn't the answer you want here, or where I'm going with this, but when you're talking about the difference, I think that the longing and hope gets real deep into something that's God has put in our heart, and having the courage to say, I think I'm going to make a change. One of the most profound ones was a guy that was an engineer that worked for Motorola back when Motorola was a thing, and he was a big dog in Motorola. And he just decided, this is not what I want to do. So in his early 40s, he went to med school.
Wow.
Because what he really wanted to do was be a pediatrician. And he eventually became our kids' doctor, Dr. DeVore.
That's cool.
And just lived a full life and took medicine over to African countries and brought healing to little kids. So it just was, that's pretty extreme. But the longings and hopes are something that's really deep. And a lot of times in a marital relationship, we're too afraid to reveal what those things are.
Wow. Yeah.
Well, here's another one coming, and it's kind of a play on one that we've asked before, but I'm just going to kind of bring it down to, like, I think the heart of what they're asking is they're talking about, how do I get time with my spouse when I have kids and we're not alone till 8 p.m. And at the end they write ideas of what to do. I think they're really just asking for, like, you've walked through a lot of couples. Is there any practical ideas that you're just like, that's a great way to accomplish that?
Yeah. So the daily connect is 30 minutes, and I emphasize that. Mm-hmm. These healthy couples that Dr. Gottman observed and his team for, healthy 30, 40, 50 years, they never stop having a minimum of 30 minutes. And the 30 minutes is important, because it's like, having more than 30 minutes together would be great, but all you need, if you just connect for 30 minutes, you're going to be doing great. So the reason that's significant is there are other responsibilities. And in my experience with couples, when they say, we just can't figure it out, and I say, okay, let's just work on it right now and figure it out, we generally are able to figure it out. When's your dinner time? And even a guy said, I don't want to talk when I first get home, and I just need to go down to the basement, work out, and take a hot shower, and just to get me. And I'm like, that's fine. Just talk about it. Agree on that. This is what things, and someone, I want to go run. It just helps me de-stress, from work, and she might say that. So you're able to organize your evening and talk about it. And we want to eat dinner together because that's important and that's an intentional time to talk to each other. But when the dishes are done and kids are doing homework, that might be a time. You just are looking for available space where, and again, people say, man, that's very intentional. And yes, people that are getting things done and working on things that are important have to be very intentional. If you want to manage your money well, you have to be intentional. If you want to manage your time well in the work world, you have to be intentional. If you want to manage your family well, your marriage well, you have to be very intentional. So almost, I would say without exception, if couples can't come back and figure out that 30-minute connect time, I'm able to help them figure it out. And again, the most recent, they were at an impasse. They were mad at each other. I want to do it here, and I want to do it here, and you won't let me go to my bedroom and just relax. I'm like, okay, time out. You guys can have it all. What's important, and can she go to her bedroom and just chill out because she's been teaching all day? Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, let her. It'll make your connect time go better. And what else is important? Well, we always had dinner time together, and that's when we connect with the kids. That's phenomenal. That's research-based on families that are doing. So what's next? Well, we put the kids to bed, and we don't want it to get too late to where you're falling asleep. So I was able to talk them through their evening and realize that 8:30, and then later we switched to 8:45 was going to be the best time, where they both still had a little bit of energy in the tank. Sit down, face to face, phones down, and just connect with each other. So they left with that agreement. And so again, to answer the question, everybody's busy. Nobody feels like they have time, but I'm able to help everybody see that you do have time. And there are maybe a few things that you can take off your plate here or there to make sure you're making that time for the most important relationship in your life, and that's your spouse.
Yeah. I remember when you kind of told me about that 30-minute time every day, but it was over a year ago. And me and Laura have not been consistently practicing this, but growing in our consistency and practicing it. And one of the ways that we did it was and our kids are a little bit older. And it was like, okay, when dinner's done, kids, y'all are cleaning the kitchen and the dining room. Mm-hmm. Mom and dad are going into the sitting room or another room. We're having a date. And I actually use that line pretty regularly. You want mom and dad to have a good relationship, right?
Yes.
Little Gracie's like, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
And
it works.
Yeah.
And I mean, the kids just need to see mom and dad in a healthy way. They need to see mom and dad hugging each other and kissing each other and sitting with each other and holding hands. It just creates, when we talk about attachment theory and safe haven and secure base, that begins not just with what they feel from you as a parent, but that comes from what they observe in you as mom and dad.
Right. And it's just been one of those things that you also have to accept the reality that the dishes aren't going to be cleaned too good. The kitchen isn't going to be done as well as you want, but you just go, it's worth it. Right.
And that is a great point right there. And Paula, I think, mentioned in the previous Q&A that flexibility is so important and really deciding what's more important. Yeah, it'd be nice to go to bed with no dishes in the sink, but if things have just gone crazy and wacko and I have to pick between, I'm going to sit with Paula and connect with her or load the dishwasher. We both have agreed that sitting with each other and connecting with each other is more important. The dishes can wait.
Right.
We can deal with that later.
Right.
I'll get up early and load the dishwasher.
Yeah. So the house looks lived in and there's 5 of us. Okay.
Yes.
We just have to accept that's the stage we're in right now.
Right.
And so, yeah. Here's the next one. As a Christian couple walking with the lens of grace through Christ, how do we help encourage and counsel other couples that are having marital issues who do not follow Christ?
Yeah. So, that is a deficit. That's a liability, but it's still not impossible for an unbeliever or somebody that's not following Christ to understand the concepts of covenant versus contract. So even when some of the couples I meet with are not Christian, but the covenantal language, the conditional language, the transactional language still resonates. It still makes sense to them because they live in it. I'll treat you right if you treat me right. And so even though they don't have the fuel of the gospel and Christ in them, the Holy Spirit in them to help it happen, we can still help them understand the idea that you're caught in a transactional loop and need to move away from that into something that would be more reflective of unconditional love and grace, that you're not making them measure up to something. And even, the concepts inside of grace to forgive and be forgiven. I mean, people, regardless of whether they're following Christ or not, can understand the idea of forgiveness. I mean, that's just a universal concept in language. And so people understand that. So there's things that you can help them understand, but what's always good is to make reference. It's the kind of forgiveness that we experience in Jesus.
Right.
You're not forcing that on them, or, we need to treat each other with grace. It makes your marriage go so much better if you create an environment of grace, just like what we experience with God. He just continually pours his grace out in our life when we don't deserve it.
That's awesome, Steve. Well, next question is this, and I do have to tell you this question's pretty heavy. It says this: how do you lead your family through a sexual abuse of a child?
Yeah, that's really hard. I mean, that is just an atomic bomb that drops on a family. I think it's important, and at Cornerstone Church, we use the Caring Well material that came out several years ago, just to help understand what the church is responsible for and what the civil authorities, which have been appointed by God, are responsible for when it comes to criminal behavior. So I think it's really helpful to kind of lay that framework as kind of part of the process. So, when there's sexual abuse, it's criminal, and we need to involve civil authorities, even though that just feels really, really bad for a church family. Why are we getting the police involved? Why are we getting the civil authorities involved? And the Caring Well material and other things that have been written are super helpful on what they're able to do and the way that they're able to help and the way that they're able to, hold the perpetrator accountable with the appropriate authority. That even though we have authority structures inside of the church, pastors and elders, it's not the same as the way that the civil authorities will appropriately hold someone accountable according to the laws that have been established. So that's an important thing. As far as what we do as a church, it's just how to, walk with them in a way that is loaded with empathy and understanding of what has actually happened, not minimizing sexual abuse, which again, too quick to say, well, if they just forgive or what, that something profound has happened to that person. There's a violation. There is a destructive nature to it that it would require the victim to receive not just love and support from the church family and community, but maybe even some outside resources, people that work in that field and know how to help a child work through the trauma that's associated with sexual abuse. And one of the things I want people to know that come out of church world is we don't want to minimize that. It's more profoundly destructive than we imagine. There's opportunity for healing, but that healing happens when we allow that person to process and work through it in the appropriate way with the appropriate people.
That's good.
Yeah. Here's the next one. Can you talk about carrying the spirit of offense too long? How do I get over it?
I think there's two ways to answer that. A lot of times we're waiting for the other person that's offended us to come back in brokenness and repentance. And what we don't realize is that offense at some level has turned into bitterness. And Hebrews 12 talks about bitterness, how destructive it is, not to that person. Sometimes we hold on to the offense and our anger and resentment as a way to have leverage against that person. But the person that's truly being affected is me. So Hebrews 12:15 says, don't let any bitter root grow up in you to cause trouble, and defile many. And what a lot of people don't realize, who are holding on to the offense, holding on to resentment, holding on to bitterness, if it has become that, is it's actually affecting other relationships that had nothing to do with it. I'm just not a happy person to be around. It's hard to hide bitterness. It comes out. And so my ability to forgive, which may or may not have anything to do with restoration, and that's sometimes what forgiveness gets confused with. I can't forgive unless there's restoration. We can forgive by just releasing our anger and resentment, and it may or may not result in restoration. So the first step in forgiving is, can I release that for my own sake and for the sake of the others around me, that I don't want to be affected by lingering resentment and bitterness. Mm-hmm. If God opens the door and that person is repentant and broken and we're able to move toward genuine restoration, then great. But what I always tell people is, you're a prisoner to that person more than you realize. You're under their power and control more than you realize, because you're holding on to something. And the fact is, you may never get the level of, I'm sorry, I hurt you, will you forgive me? You may never hear those words. And so you have a choice. Am I going to hold on to that forever, or am I going to release it and move on? Not easy to do, but it can be done. And it's really, really important for their own spiritual health, both physically, spiritually, and mentally.
Okay, we got like 2 or 3 more.
Okay,
and so
let's go.
Yeah, this is one right here. It's like, as we talked about being the person that speaks and the listener. Somebody asked a question about the listener being like, if I'm in the midst of listening and I don't agree with what my spouse is saying, for instance, I think they're wrong. How do I confront that and not be defensive? And also, I may be feeling manipulated. And I think the person trying to think of, like, they're using a moment of weakness or a moment of that as like kind of a weapon in a fight.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot going on in that question.
Right.
I think we don't understand the value of letting somebody talk and express what they're thinking and feeling when there's disagreement with it. So that, again, if I compare that conversation in the marital relationship to what happens in the elder room, if one of the elders is talking and right away I'm like, well, that's a dumb idea. I don't agree with that idea. I tried that 10 years ago at my other church, and I know that that's destined to failure. I could just cut that elder off, or I could just give them opportunity to speak and add value to the conversation. So we have to be really careful on how quickly we disagree with somebody. And a lot of times when we disagree, we have to do our own heart check. What's at the root of my disagreement? Is it pride? Is it contempt? We just need to do a lot of soul searching before I just want to look at somebody, whether it's my wife or husband or somebody else on the leadership team, and say, you're flat out dead wrong. If it's a sinful thing, it's a clear act of sin, that might be somewhat different. But even then, I still, and I do this all the time in counseling sessions. People tell me things and I just want to react, and I want to just react and attack.
Yep.
But it's so important. I give them opportunity to talk and process, and then carefully and graciously come back and say, when you said that, this is what that sounded like to me. It sounded sinful, or it sounded like hurtful, or, so we want, it's not that we can't disagree. We obviously can do that, but I think we jump too quick to do that. It's better to just hear them out, take notes, mental notes, come back and have your opportunity to say what you're thinking of feeling and how your perspective on it. And that's just where couples just hit a dead end again and again. We just don't give the other person the opportunity. I have messed up on that so many times, because I joked about it in the marriage experience with everybody. I'm a pastor. I have a degree in theology. I'm a mental health counselor. I have a degree in mental health counseling. I am smart. I've got it figured out.
Yeah.
So I could be so quick to just cut people off and not see that the more important thing maybe is not the thing I disagree with, but them just having the opportunity. So, because sometimes they're just speaking out of pain and sometimes they're speaking out of hurts. The importance of letting somebody feel heard, even if I disagree with it. And I disagree with a lot of stuff I hear, but there's a way to move toward that, a constructive way to move that, other than cutting somebody off and saying, you're wrong. I disagree with that. You're sinful. We just need to give people the opportunity to talk and express what they're thinking and feeling. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question
Yeah.
on that? So this is along the lines of disagreement, not quite the same as this question, but one of the big questions we got during the Q&A was somebody asking, like, what do you do if you can't come to an agreement on a really big decision? And so that led kind of into a conversation about leadership and mutual submission and how you move forward in unity in those decisions. And as Paula was talking, one of the things that you said about her was that you are very grateful for the ways that she has discernment and wisdom, and she speaks into situations. And I think you said something along the lines of like, why would I not listen to that, or why would I not heed that? One of the questions that I had along with that is, how would you counsel a couple that is struggling with big leadership decisions like that, where one of the spouses is like, the hesitancy is clearly coming from a place of anxiety, like, and not just like feeling a little bit nervous, but maybe like mental anxiety,
Right.
Like that's an ongoing issue, or maybe it's spiritual immaturity or something like that. How would you counsel, whether it's the husband or the wife in the situation, to see that clearly? How would you counsel them to help their spouse?
Yeah. Another loaded question, and a lot I could say on that.
Yeah.
I think, again, I said this with all the couples, you have to decide, what is the nature of the decision? Is it like make or break right now? We have got to make a decision.
Right.
There could be something like that. But a lot of things I hear don't have to happen. I mean, it's something we can table. And I gave the Tim Keller example. I want to go plant a church in New York. And she said, I'm just not ready for that. And he said, okay. And that was the loving thing to do. So I think we have to really, really evaluate how big is the decision. And I think I mentioned this. I asked a husband one time who just said, there's decisions I have to make. And I'm like, what? Give me an example. And not able to give me an example of something that he might have to make for them that didn't involve her, that she disagreed with. It's just not worth it. So if it's a mental health problem, if there's anxiety, that's another thing I see. A spouse, whether it's the husband or the wife, not taking the time to understand what their spouse is experiencing and not walking with them. I mean, I had a couple and the husband knew that his wife had been sexually traumatized in her teenage years by family members.
Wow.
And that a lot of the stuff that they were dealing with was coming out of that, but had never taken the time to understand that, talk to her about that, but was frustrated with her because she wasn't behaving this way or this way. And again, trauma's not an excuse, but there was just a lot of things that she was still working through. And the loving thing is to understand. So we just started doing trauma education in our marriage counseling, just to try to help give some level of understanding of what she was experiencing.
Yeah.
And, things that were truly triggering for her. And again, trauma gets used a lot, abuse gets overused, but when somebody has been sexually traumatized and raped by family members, it has a profound and lasting effect. So I think when there's those kinds of things, I think it's a giant, can we push pause on this decision? Can I move toward you to understand what you're experiencing? Can I give you the time and space to work on that and get to a better space in dealing with anxiety? And I'm doing that, with a lot of couples
Yeah.
where one of them has OCD and the other one has social anxiety disorder. I mean, just like,
Yeah.
and so we're working on things and just seeing them come to a better understanding of each other before some big decision has to be made. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
So we got two more.
Okay.
We'll start with the short one. The long one, I think, would probably be good for us all to maybe weigh in a little bit
Okay.
on that. But the first one is this. The person asked, as a husband who struggles with apathy, the way I've tried to mitigate and correct seems very similar to a way described as the horseman of contempt. Is there nuance there that I am missing? Or am I doing something inappropriate within the context of leading my marriage and family?
Yeah. So my quick response to that is that's a really hard place to be. That's a very difficult burden to carry because a lot of times, whether it's the husband or the wife, might be energized by what they're learning, experience. They want a better marriage. They've chosen to follow Christ, and the spouse is not. And the Bible speaks to that. 1 Corinthians 7, if an unbelieving husband wants to stick around, let him stick around. It doesn't say try to convert the husband, try to do this. Just if he wants to leave, let him leave. If he wants to stick around or she wants to stick around, let him stick around. 1 Peter 3 gives a little bit more nuance to that because a lot of those those women that
Hey, Steve, sorry to interrupt. I'm sorry. I don't think I was really clear. It's not about a wife talking about a husband who has apathy, but it's about a husband that I struggle with apathy. But in my apathy, but what I try to do in leading my home is through mitigation and correction. The way that he's doing mitigation and correction.
It's the husband that's apathetic, but then getting on the horseman to make things happen.
That's right. He's the one that's so he's going, the way that I try to mitigate and correct seems very similar to the way described of a horseman. So I think there's maybe a guy that just went through the horseman stuff and was like, of contempt, and was like, oh my goodness, this might be me.
Yeah.
And it's like, what's your advice to him?
Yeah. So I do see that a lot. And I think to kind of empathize with that person, I mean, that just feels intuitive, and they might have good intentions. I mean, I had one husband that I was meeting with that he was just riding around on contempt all the time. But I began to realize his intentions were good in his mind because he just wanted so bad to fix things and correct things. But what it obviously was more of a power and control, or even, I mean, some of that even comes out of, what I addressed in there. What does spiritual leadership look like? Is it correcting and fixing and pointing out and rebuking, or is it creating a loving and caring environment? So I would say, if you're on the horses, get off, because even if you have good intentions and you mean well, that's not the way to connect and lead your family well. It's more about, how can I love and serve my family? How can I love and serve my wife? How can I, start working on the floors of the Gottman house? How can I assess, is there covenant, grace, empowerment, intimacy in here? So that, again, I see that in a lot of Christian husbands that get fired up and they want to fix things, and they just start mandating and dictating, and again, it looks and sounds right, but it's just doing greater damage. And there's a different pathway
Gotcha.
to get there. So if you're apathetic, and sometimes the apathetic husband, I just tell him, you be the one to help you and your wife figure out the 5 rituals. You take the lead on that.
Yeah.
Step up, and those are the more important things right now, rather than riding around on that horse and trying to correct things and fix things.
Right. Yeah. Here's a question that kind of came to mind that kind of jumps off of that. What do you do as a spouse, and you're trying to implement these 5 things, these 5 rituals, and you just have a spouse that's just resistant to it? Are you at a point there, especially as a believer, that's like, you're just praying for your spouse and continue to try to woo them to those things?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those are the desperate places that people find themselves in. And, You can't mandate it. You can't force it. You can't badger it. You can't get up on one of the horses and say, we need to do these 5 rituals, you pathetic, lazy loser, you know? So it's interesting. The 1 Peter 3 verse comes to my mind, where let them be won over, not by your words, but by the behavior of your wife. And there's just subtle ways that you can invite someone in, and maybe you're not going to get those 5 rituals working right out of the gate, but you can subtly invite them in to moments that would be reflective of that. Yeah. But that's a hard thing. And I mean, it's often manifest in either the husband or wife calling and saying, we need counseling. They're reluctant to come in. But maybe they will, maybe they won't. And sometimes they show up and the spouse didn't come in, and all we can do is say, here's the things that you can do, the way that you need to behave in obedience to Christ that could be helpful in building the right kind of environment, that they see a change in you, and maybe God would use that. 1 Peter 3, win them over by your behavior, what they begin to see in you that's different than you riding around on one of the horses. So it's a hard place to be, and a lot of people are there, and I empathize with that and try to help them know how to work through it alone, and pray that God would pull the other one in to the process.
Yeah.
All right. Here's the last question, and it's a doozy. It's a long one.
Okay.
I think I actually read it to you beforehand, just so you be ready. It says, something I fear is that society of the future that feels inevitable, which I believe will come out of the trends of women putting off marriage and family creation until they're in their late 30s, and the trend among women currently that seems to glamorize and glorify divorce as if it is a rite of passage. My questions are, what are your thoughts generally as a counselor and a pastor? What can should the church be doing for this issue specifically? And how and what can the church do for the family who postpones family creation until it is too late and struggles with all of the things that come from the biological realities of trying to conceive as they get closer to pre-menopause? I feel like the church as a whole is ill prepared for this.
Wow.
Yeah.
Go.
We could table that for another podcast.
Right. Yeah.
There's so much going on in that, and I appreciate that question. It's where do you begin? I think we don't want to say that being single is wrong or bad. I mean, that might be something that a person has chosen to do, and we definitely don't want to say that it's wrong to be single if that's what somebody's chosen to do. I think can be helpful for us to think about, why are people choosing to be single? And in my experience, and this is not for everyone, but in my experience, a lot of people are single because of their family of origin. They just have never seen a marriage that works. They don't want what they saw in their family of origin, the family system they came out of, and they're hesitant to even want to go there. I know of one guy that's still single, and he's in his 50s now. And I believe every couple, if I remember, every couple in his family went through a divorce. Mm-hmm. And he's just like, I don't want that. I don't want to experience that pain. I don't have confidence that won't happen to me. And so I think it's not always the case, but often, singleness is a path people choose because of family of origin stuff. A lot of times there's other profound crisis going on in their personal life, and that can be at the root of that. So I want to give space and grace for that. But at the same time, I think it's helpful. I'm just thinking right now, thoughts are popping. Somebody came to me that was a single adult and said, I think God has called me to singleness. And I said, how do you know that? And they said, well, I don't know. I'm still single. And I said, well, do you want to be married? And they said, yeah, I would love to be married. And I said, well, I don't think he's called you to singleness. if that's the desire he's put in your heart. I said the gift of singleness that we kind of see in Scripture, I think is so unique and different that you would know that. What's normal is it was not good for man to be alone, and God created Eve. So what's normal is marriage and procreation. That's God's design. So I don't want to minimize their or judge their decision to be single, but I want to create some kind of environment or some kind of conversation of what did God want from the beginning? Why did God create Eve? Why did God create marriage? And just try to tease that out a little bit. And for this person that confided that in me, no big surprise. They were married a year later, and I think they now have 2 kids. And so there's just a lot of different things going on in the mind of someone who's single. Why are they putting things off? Why are they waiting? That could be coming from a lot of different places. And again, not to say it's wrong to be single.
Right.
And we want to embrace and celebrate singleness at whatever level we need to as the church. But the reason behind it sometimes can be a little bit off, and maybe some coaching and help in that.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Does that even touch the question?
Oh, it did. I think
There
you
were
got
like-
the first part.
Yeah, I feel like there were like 7 angles to that question that we could have addressed.
Yeah. Yeah. I also feel like, I think probably what this person's looking at, and I just want to kind of encourage them as a pastor, is they're probably looking at a world that, and I think we bump into this too with a lot of college students where they are so hyper-focused on their career and getting their things together that they're passing these things by.
Yeah.
And some of that is built up of financial anxiety. Some of that's built up from pressure from their parents, because they're taking on so much debt. They get into these jobs and having the pressure to use them. And then there's also other ends too that we see where it's like, well, there's kind of a montage of like, you have to discover yourself, and which is really code for a lot of different things. And it's just, I think what you said is so clear, like figuring out why are they single?
Right.
Yeah.
What is the reason? And
as you're talking, I'm thinking of Keller's book, The Meaning of Marriage. He actually starts out because his audience had so many singles in it, and he's writing a book on marriage.
yeah,
So he actually, now that I'm thinking about it, really talks about singleness and tries to put it in its right place, but to help single people celebrate marriage.
right.
Because it's a gift from God, and maybe think about it differently, and maybe even in a way that would maybe move them more in that direction.
Yeah.
And he does it in the way Keller does things. It's brilliant. I wouldn't even attempt to try to summarize what he says, but maybe whoever wrote that question could get that book and just see Keller's
Yeah.
the way he talks to singles in a book on marriage.
Yeah.
Well, and I just want to encourage them too, because I think what's bringing that question up may be some anxiety about what they're seeing happen in the world.
Right.
And I think we just got to remember there's a God that's sovereign, that's good. And what the church is meant to do is to continue to teach the Bible, continue to teach what marriage is, that comes from the Lord, and that's a blessing.
Yes.
And that, and also I think many people need to hear, I was teaching about Ephesians 5 to a bunch of youth once. And this girl comes up to me, very similar, says, I always thought I'd be destined to be divorced because my family members have been divorced so many times. I just thought that would always be me. And I never heard anybody, because one of the things it said is just because this was a pattern in your parents' marriage or throughout your whole family doesn't mean that has to be yours. Like God can redeem anything.
Yeah.
Yep.
And because we believe in a God that raises the dead, we believe in a God that is over all things. Like there is hope. And so I think the role of the church is, I don't think we're actually ill-equipped.
Right.
I think we have the Bible. I think we have the Holy Spirit working within the people of God, and we have the community of God and the teachings. And I'm actually very hopeful about what I see happening, particularly amongst younger generations in this area.
I think too, there's like a lot of singles that I know that don't want to get married or want to push it off. I think have bought into a caricature of what marriage and parenting is too. Right. And from what they see in the media and culture in general, they haven't seen. I don't want to minimize the people who have gone through like really hard, like their parents had a really hard divorce or their siblings, whatever that is. But I think there's a lot of people too that all they see in culture is that like a marriage that is a ball and chain,
Yeah.
and a parents that can't do anything fun anymore because they have to put their kids down at 7:30 or something like that. And so I think I think a lot of people are buying into that caricature. And one of the things that I thought was interesting when we first had Elliot, like we've had some people that were close to us that had been married and they were kind of in the same boat. Like they wanted to push it off because they wanted to do their own thing. And when we had our son, they started hanging out. Hazel started hanging out with them, and like the wife just caught the bug, and she was like, "This is fun." Like, and like it kind of triggered something in her, where it was like, this like God wired us as parents to do this, and it is a good thing, and it is a beautiful thing for a marriage and parenting to do that. And now they have 2 kids, like, you know, and it's so I think, you know, is addressing that question in terms of like what are practical steps. Like I think we are equipped as a church to be able to like go into the world and display what like a God honoring marriage and God honoring parenting is, and that it's not the caricature that culture makes it out to be.
Well, and I think churches like ours, like Cornerstone and Mercy Hill, are uniquely positioned to impact the younger generation with those worries and anxieties. Because I mean, we say this all the time. If you're a college student watching this, well, you shouldn't have been, but you're a college student watching. I'm kidding. The thing I'm telling you is, if you're at Mercy Hill Church, you need to go get into a home of a married people. Like, don't just spend all your time on campus, and don't just look for a married person to just like, I want mentorship. Great. That doesn't mean just sitting across the table. It means observing how they're a dad or a husband or a wife or a mom. And that's only going to happen is if you get into the family and help serve and be a part of them. Like, go along with those people. You will pick up so much that you never would have gotten from a one-on-one coffee date for 3 hours every week. And so it's just, I just think too, if you're a younger person, all you've seen that is like, great, there's probably great married people in your church. Get involved, okay? Help with their kids, be a blessing to them, and you will pick up so much. You know, like I think sometimes people miss that, you know? And so,
and I as you were talking, was just thinking about the world that the Apostle Paul lived in Peter, you know, the pre-Christian world, and the idea of family had just been run amok, just disaster. So people coming to Christ and just like, okay, how do we do family? So you have these household texts that celebrate marriage, celebrate having kids. And so I think, you know, now that we live in a post-Christian world, so to speak, that we can do the same thing. And that's why even in our marriage experience, I'm taking us back to Genesis 2. I mean, God created this thing. It's not some man-made thing that is to say, God, you made this for me. And again, there's reasons that might keep somebody from getting married, but you want to explore those. But just to celebrate, God made marriage. That was what he wanted for Adam, to celebrate marriage. And, you know, he created us with the ability to produce children. God did that. He wants us to have kids. And so I think it is coming back to, this is God's design, and this is part of what's good in his creation. And I want to enter into that and enjoy that. And, you know, hopefully be in a church that celebrates family and marriage and can help me move, you know, in that direction.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Steve Jones, thank you so much for doing this. It's
You are
amazing.
welcome.
I felt challenged. I felt convicted and encouraged.
Yeah.
And, you know, the last 2 days by the material you brought, and I just know that my marriage has, as long as I have the discipline to do these things, has an opportunity to continue to grow in the way that God wants it to grow.
And I think it, you know, hopefully people heard that these are things that just haven't come out of a book or even what I'm doing with other couples, but things that Paula and I have worked on and continue to work on. So every time I speak on this stuff, talk about it, it continues to encourage me in my own marital relationship. I just want to have that openness and transparency. So I got a lot out of this weekend too. Which is really awesome.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here, man.
Yep. You're welcome. Thanks for the invitation anytime.
Yes, we will.
All right.